What I often see when we're implementing big changes in organizations is that technically this is often quite doable. The teams are, well, they make it work. They learn the new things. But when it really gets hard is when they need to get out of their silo and work with the rest of the organization.
Yeah, I see that as well. You see a lot of, you can maybe even call it resistance to change. And I've encountered the same things. The people that do not really want to embrace change. And for me, it seems that I don't have the right mindset. So I call that a DevOps mindset. And I think that we should do a podcast about that one.
Yeah, let's do a podcast about growing a DevOps mindset.
Let's do it.
The Lead Podcast, a podcast for leaders in engineering, architecture, and development.
So Rene, let's look at an example. What I often see, for example, when we're doing cloud migrations, is that teams that want to use the cloud in a technical way, they are quite able to do so. They like the new powers that they get, the new agility that they have. But what I also see is that there's often, other teams involved who have to do with security and governance, and they just use the cloud as yet another data center. They think that is, it was always the way they used it, so they're using that now as well.
Yeah. I think it's typically an example of people that accept the status quo.
Yeah.
I think you can see it in cloud migrations. You can also see it in adopting a new tool or a new program that you have to work with, but you can also see it in those simple things. So can you relate to an example that I have heard very, very often? For example, I need to have this firewall port opened.
Mm-hmm.
And then people that work for a longer time in an organization, their default response is something like, yeah, well, it takes 2 weeks to get a firewall port opened. This is what it is, right? And that is what I call accepting a status quo, where people, they do not even think about how it can be different. It's just something that they are used to, and they are not challenging that situation. They are just, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is a new world with new rules, but if you just keep doing it like the old ways, then nothing change. And I often see like the behavior often comes from that's my staple example, right? If you've seen Office Space.
Yeah.
It's the people who are in your example looking at, I'm maintaining this firewall, then I am the only one that is supposed to make changes to this firewall.
Yeah. So it's really your domain. It's for those people, maybe even, and maybe it's a little bit exaggerated, but maybe it's their right to existence in that specific organization. Like, the firewall is my domain, so do not touch the firewall. And let's not make it easier for other people to do something with that firewall, because, well, it says something about me.
Yeah, and often they come up with the excuses of, it's less secure if I'm not doing it. But on the other hand, if you would change it and make it more like a self-service scenario where people could do these things themselves, only impacting their own work, and maybe even have the current people working on those firewalls as consultants, helping, advising, or maybe reviewing if it's the first steps, right? It should be possible, but it is a mindset thing for these people. Like, maybe I'm losing my job if I'm not doing the firewall. Then what am I doing here? What's my purpose?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that is, if something else, like a cloud migration, lots of automation, lots of different things come along your way, and you're so used to that does something to a person. They fear for their job, maybe, or they fear for their whole being. Maybe they suffer from imposter syndrome, like, I cannot do what I need to do. And I think that these things, and there are multiple symptoms that I recognize. So the status quo is one. The Stabler example or the silo example is another one. But you also have people that I call pleasers. They talk with other people. If they get asked a question, always fine, always great, always perfect, but they are not actually moving. It's just like gluing people together. And for me, that are symptoms of what I call a fixed mindset. Or it's actually not something that I call a fixed mindset, but it's something that an author of a book, Growth Mindset, Carol Dweck, is calling a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know, but Carol Dweck is an author. She's a psychologist, and she wrote a book on growth mindset. And back in the days, I think it was in the 80s or something, she did some research because she worked at a school back then. And she saw in that school, two groups of kids. And the kids came from similar backgrounds, similar intelligence, similar social status, similar areas where they lived, similar kinds of parents. So everything was more or less the same. And what she found is that some of the kids in the school, they were really driven towards success. They were really trying out new stuff. They were thriving, actually. But the other group of kids, they were actually very reluctant to doing something, to learn new things, to really pursue new challenges or success. So she started investigating that, like what happens here? Why is this what it is? And she did an experiment where she put like two groups of kids in separate rooms, of course. And one of the groups of kids, she gave challenges like that became more and more difficult every time when they got a new challenge. And they had a fixed amount of time to actually complete the challenge. And when they were done, that group of kids were actually complimented by the result. Wow, it's great. Everything was checked off. Everything was right. You did not make any mistakes. Really on the result of the thing. And also making remarks to the kids like, so, wow, this answer is right. So you must be very smart. Wow, this is very great. You must be successful, or all those things. So really on the personality of the kids, linking that to the result that they had.
Yeah.
So in the other room, there were also a group of kids, and they got the same challenges with the same amount of time. And the difference was that those kids were not complimented on their personality traits or on the result, but on their behavior. So, for example, wow, you worked hard. You put in a lot of effort. You worked very nicely together. Wow, what a great result you achieved as a team. Great that you did it like this, or great that you learned from that other person. So really on the behavioral part of things.
Yeah.
And then after a while, the challenges became more and more difficult. And then at the end of the challenges, they faced one more challenge. And they had a smaller amount of time. And they asked the kids the question, do you want to do this challenge? It is harder, you have less time.
Yeah.
The group that was complimented on the result, they said, no, we don't want to do that. Because they were afraid to lose, were afraid for a bad result.
If they didn't get the results, they would not get the compliments. Right?
Exactly. And the other group said, yeah, well, bring it on. Because we are working and we just put in the effort and we'll see how far we get. And she actually did all these investigations more and more, different groups of people, but also in business, also in sports, also in different areas. And she constantly found the same behavior. Yeah. Which is really nice, because this is how we as persons are really programmed. Like since kindergarten, we are praised for the results. Wow, you can draw very nicely. Yeah. You must be an artist. Wow, you have good math figures. So you must be very smart or intelligent. And we start linking our results, so what we produce, to our personality. Yeah. So the moment our results come into a challenge, we are linking that to our personality. We suddenly feel that we are not smart.
And it's actually a problem in society, right? We like to praise everyone who has good results, who is the fastest, who's the best at something, instead of putting in the most effort. And especially in learning situations like in school, etc., we're still often looking a lot at the grades instead of how much effort are you putting in? Because later in the real world, at your job, if you have a complex job, you can't always get the A result, right? You aim for the best result, but you can't know this up front.
Yeah, but still, in businesses, you also see really KPI driven businesses. You are still praising for your result and not the effort that you put in, and that does something to people.
Yeah. So what I see then a lot as well is, if you're only being praised for the results, you take less risks.
Exactly.
Because, well, taking risks can go either way, right? If you take a risk and it goes wrong, then that also looks bad on you if you're looking merely at the results.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the growth mindset that Carol Dweck is speaking about, so it has something to do with how you look at effort. So people with a growth mindset, they say, wow, that's great, you have to put in the effort. People with a fixed mindset, they see that as something negative.
Yeah.
You see also that people with a fixed mindset, they avoid challenges. They see people's success as a threat. They have a setback and they feel helpless because it's not their fault. It must be the environment and the surroundings. If you give them criticism, they are defensive. And then on the opposite side, people with a growth mindset, they are far more resilient. They are challenging. If someone is successful, they are looking like, oh, what did this person do to be successful? And what can I put in as an effort to be successful too? And that is, so coming back to the topic of the DevOps mindset, is that we need to take into consideration that people that work at a company, and especially people that work longer at a company with a certain cultural behavior, people are getting programmed to have this fixed mindset and to not look at challenges as something positive, but something that can be, well, a negative thing for them. So with that in mind, we should take the next step in, for example, how do we actually start building that growth mindset, and how do you start moving people in the right direction?
Okay, so what are the things that are blocking us in that fixed mindset?
Yeah, so there are, of course, a number of things. What I said, it is maybe something that is already there from kindergarten time. So it's not something. I'm not a psychologist, so there can be a number of things. But one of the things or a number of things that also come from another great book from Patrick Lencioni. It's called Getting Naked, and I link the things that he writes there on the fears. I link that strongly, especially in the DevOps mindset that we are talking about in organization. I link the fears to growing
to the fixed mindset.
That DevOps mindset. So he mentions 3 fears. So there was one fear that we all recognize, maybe, is the fear of being embarrassed. Yeah. So maybe you can relate to that already.
Yeah, of course. And I think it matches perfectly on the fixed versus growth mindset, because the fear of being embarrassed is, if you make mistakes, then you could be embarrassed, right? If I don't know the answer to a question, if I do something wrong, everyone will laugh at me. That's the fixed mindset approach.
Of course, yeah, and that is very common, especially in a bigger organization when you are new. Or maybe you start as a young person in that organization. It is scary because if you don't understand something, for example, in a meeting where everybody uses all these abbreviations, and you don't know, are you actually raising your hand and ask the question, what does it mean? Because I don't know. And this is where the key is. So to overcome that fear, you need to start doing that. Yeah. You need to start asking those questions. If you don't understand something, just ask the question.
Yeah, and I often work at my clients as an external employee. So for me, it's easier to do this, right? I don't have to fear for my job, because, well, what are they going to do? Fire me? Then I'll get a new assignment, right? So I think as an external employee, this might be easier to do, but I like to ask these dumb questions. What is this abbreviation that everyone here is mentioning?
Yeah. Or make a dumb suggestion like, why haven't we tried this simple thing?
Yeah.
And then everybody said, maybe we haven't thought about it. And what I see, if I ask these dumb questions, they are not so dumb, because eventually at the end, I usually get, I'm glad you asked the question because I also didn't know, but I didn't dare to ask.
Yeah.
So it's a very ingrained fear, like fear from being embarrassed.
Yeah.
And another fear, and you already related to that, is the fear of losing a job or losing the business as you are a consultant. So if you are really afraid to be punished for something that you do wrong, like, oh, maybe I will get fired, or maybe they will throw me out as a consultant. Yeah. It really holds back on being honest, and it really holds back on giving the answers that really matter, or really move the needle a little bit more forward.
Yeah. This is also what you see a lot in like reporting out. Everything is a bit greener, looking a bit better than they actually are, right? And if you look at that through certain levels, then everything is really, really nice and green at the top.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that if you overcome that fear by just saying, well, what is the worst that can happen? I am a good person. If I will get fired, this is not the place that I want to be.
I don't want to work here anyways.
I don't want to work here anyways. So if you step away then you will start giving away your knowledge. Then you do what is needed, not as what is asked. You will tell the kind truth. Like if something bothers you or something is really obvious wrong, then you just tell it to anybody, also to like the highest boss in the organization. So that is the second fear. And then there is a third one, and that's also, I think, very human, and I think also something that I can relate to, and that is the fear of being inferior. Like I am a lesser person or being than my colleague or someone else. I am a manager, so I want to keep this manager status because this is something that I earned. Yeah. And
also the imposter syndrome is
also
imposter
syndrome. Yeah, I'm not good enough. That is maybe also from the youth, from your education. It's you had a 7, great. Maybe it can be an 8. Why isn't it an 8? Like this is also something that is very subtle. But the fear of feeling inferior, being a lesser being, is something that's also very human. Yeah. And you should also start working to overcome that. Like what you do is not who you are. It's 2 completely different things. And if you make a mistake, that it can happen, that says something about your work maybe or your action, but not something about you as a person. So those things are not interrelated, which is in a fixed mindset very much the case.
So in a fixed mindset, that making mistakes is really a problem. It's something that you did wrong. While in a growth mindset, making mistakes is more like a learning opportunity, right? We learn from things that go wrong, and it's not your fault that you did something that deleted production environment. Exactly. I don't know, but if you look a bit further, like why were you in the capability of actually doing that? And maybe that's the root cause. Maybe we should avoid having the permissions for anyone to be able to do that. Maybe we should have 4 eyes principles when doing such destructive things. So building those kind of things in by making mistakes, by learning, makes making mistakes actually improve the process.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there is, of course, more. The growth mindset is not something that can be applied to everything, and it's not like if you overcome the fears, then you're all great. But I think those on individual level is something that people can really start first detecting. Like, oh shit, I'm doing this. I'm having this behavior, and then really start trying these simple things. But then, as if you want to move an organization, where we started is, why are people so reluctant to change? Like, people are individuals, but they are also forming a group. So you need to really follow a process there to also
Take everyone.
take everybody along the way. And what I see happens a lot is that we really, as technical people, we start flooding people with knowledge. So if we want to use the cloud, we want to have the organization start using cloud. What we are going to do is we are going to do training. We are going to level up. We do all kinds of video. We tell a lot about the cloud. We share a lot of knowledge. So it's all knowledge.
Yeah. So they know Terraform and all
Everything.
those things.
It's
how
great.
how to build infrastructure as code, but the real, why are we actually doing this? Why is it helping us?
Yes. And yeah, I like models. So there is also a great model for change. It's called the ADKAR model. So it's the first step of the ADKAR or ADKAR model is awareness. So the first step is awareness. Why are we doing this? Is everybody understanding the reasoning? Or does everybody know and understand why we are moving to cloud? Why do we want to use cloud? And that is not a newsletter or one simple message that you send out. That is a continuum of constantly messaging on different levels with different angles to different audiences. And you really need to take all the people along the way on why are we doing this? And only then people need to be helped in the second letter of the ADKAR, is the D, in their desires. You need to figure out and talk to people about their desires. They need to understand what's in it for me. So why would I start using cloud? What makes it my life better?
I think
for
that
me as a person.
This really relates back to the digital strategy episode that we had already, right? Like, the awareness, why are we doing certain things? Having a vision of where we want to go and what will be the impact of that. Instead of just, you need to do this, here's the technical stuff to do it. And then the desire is more on a personal level for them.
Exactly,
like, what did they get out of it?
Yeah, you need to translate that broader organization vision. So we are not so bad in communicating the organization vision, but like helping people to understand, okay, but what does that mean for me? And how can I relate to that? That is a very important step, because if they have the desire, then they are recipient to knowledge. Like, oh, I want this. So what do I need to do? Yeah, then I need to have the knowledge. And then you can just feed them with a lot of knowledge. And that is what we are good at. That is the simple part. You might already say, like, this is how you do it. So then they have the knowledge. And then that's not enough. Then like it's like, I can tell you how to drive a car. I can teach you all the theory. But does it...
I need to
can
practice
you actually drive the car then? No, then you have to practice in a safe environment where you are safe, where you can make mistakes. So there is this whole mindset coming in again. Like, do you feel safe enough in your organization to actually step up and do the challenges? So then they in the ADKAR model, the fourth letter is the A of ability. Then they need to start learning the ability to do it, to work with cloud, to do all the stuff that they need to do. And then when they do it, you need to do the reinforcement. So the last letter, the R, on, okay, great, you have done it. Now look at the results that you have achieved. And then people start, okay, this is something that actually helps. And then we can go back into the motions of, okay, we've accepted a new status quo. Yeah. And we can move forward then.
So I guess this also works in small iterations, right? And not trying to take too big.
No, so it's really like you can have of course the end vision design with the end in mind, but then you need to really break it down. And the first step that in this big journey we are going to do is this one. And why are we doing this? This is why, and this is for you important. Why you should do it, etc., etc.
Yeah. So in the awareness phase, I would focus on both on the end. This is what we want to achieve, and that's why at first we're taking this first step.
Yeah.
So then it really, from a fuzzy goal, maybe that's years away, into getting into something that is concrete and you can actually start doing.
Yeah. So this is both on on an organization or a team level. It's also, of course, on an individual level, because every people's desire can differ. But it's, I think, also very important to start building on an environment where people can beat themselves, where they can actually have the space and room to learn and to fail. And I think that is also very important in building teams or building organizations or groups, that you really start focusing on a trust level.
Yeah.
So instead of put people together and start doing it, you also need to do a lot of investment to grow that DevOps mindset into an environment where people can actually do that.
And they need to feel
trust.
safe.
Exactly.
Right? They need to feel safe to make mistakes.
Yes.
To try out new things, etc.
Yeah. And what is an important thing in the work environment to feel safe is that you trust the people around you. If I trust people around me, I can have a conflict with them. I can have a debate with them. I don't understand what you're saying. I do not agree with what you're saying. Because only when you have the conflict, then you can have commitment from the whole group to actually do something. Otherwise, people will say, "Yeah, I never agreed with this idea.
Yeah.
So why should I commit to this idea?" So only when you have the trust, you can have the conflict. If you have the conflict, you can have the commitment. And only if you have the commitment, you can be accountable and have the results that you need. So, and it all starts with trust. And the trust building, you can only do that when people are opening up, when people are trusting their colleagues and do not see others as a threat. So that comes back to the beginning, where we see all these symptoms of people that actually do not trust their environment. They protect their silo, they protect their status quo. So those are all symptoms of an organization that is less able to move.
Yeah.
So I think that is a lot of things. And I think the last thing that I want to say about this is, if you encounter all these situations, then you will also hear a lot of noise around you that
people
everybody disagree, or everybody says this, or nobody wants to have this. And what I also learned in my whole endeavor of changing organizations or teams, that it's always a very small group, the loud minority or the vocal minority, that is shouting. Yeah. And they always use terms like it's always everybody
power terms.
Or nobody. But if you actually start asking the questions in the organization, like, okay, I hear this. How do you feel this? How do you see this? Then you will actually see that there is a very small group that is very loud, but a very, very large group that is not so loud. It's very silent. But the majority, they are actually neutral. They do not really care if it's left or right. They do not shout about it. So they do have not a strong opinion. And that is the group that you should start working on. Start working on that big silent majority with the ADCAR process, with growing the DevOps mindset process. Because if those people are going to move, there's two options. The people that shout, they leave. Or the people that shout, they will actually join the others as an ambassador of this of the chain.
And does it help to find some champions or heroes within that silent majority that can help in the positive way?
Yeah, that is a very good thing to do. It's sometimes very hard to find them because there is always the formal leaders. There's this informal leaders, and then there is informal leaders that are actually against a change, but there are also the silent informal leaders. They are sometimes harder to find, but you can,
if you pay attention,
do that. If you pay attention and you ask around, and then really let them join, bring them into the game, bring them into the plans, make them an ambassador, and then things will start happening.
I also think that what I often see is like, with this vocal minority, they often are very public about their opinions, that they don't agree with such things. And you might also have people who ask you questions more on a one-on-one engagement, and like, I don't fully understand how this works, or can you explain this to me again? Those are the people that if you convince those, they can help you, embed that further into the organization, because they do have the right mindset. They just are not sure on fully embracing that change yet.
True. So quite a journey, I think.
Yeah. So I wanted to, when you were explaining that model for the growth mindset with the two groups in the school of teaching children, I was also thinking about another example that I heard earlier about having certain boundaries and having the freedom within those boundaries, right? And there was this experiment that they had kids in a playground, and they were told, you can do whatever you want in the playground. You have the freedom to do everything. And what they noticed is that they all stuck quite close to the teacher, because they didn't really know where their freedom ended. There was no
boundaries.
There was no boundaries. There was no fence around the playground. They could go as far as they want. So that was hard for them to know, well, what should I do? And then what they did is they did the same experiment then in the playground with a fence around it. And same thing, the kids got the assignment to just go play. And when there were these clear boundaries, they actually they went all around the playground to play. And it's really, sometimes we think boundaries are a bad thing, but some boundaries actually can help you.
Yeah, I think that it really ties into the aligned autonomy model that we, I think, also talked about earlier in an earlier episode on the engineering culture.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should also do an episode on that one. Like there is a lot of things to tell about that, because I think it's also to do with trust and the boundaries and a safe environment where you can be yourself.
Yeah, this growth mindset is really a key topic in the business, but also in a personal level. When you have kids, do you focus on the grades that they get on school, or do you focus on the effort and on the teamwork and those kind of things? So, in the end, it's something that we as society needs to grow.
So I would highly recommend to read the book, or at least watch the TED Talk on the growth mindset, and maybe the book from Lencioni.
Yeah, I really like that book as well.
Getting Naked, about the fears that you need to overcome as a person. And I think it brings us already to an end of the podcast already.
Yeah. So great talk again.
Yeah. Really enjoyed it, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. And we will see you, or actually hear you, the next time at the Lead Podcast.
Okay, bye-bye.
The Lead Podcast, a podcast for leaders in engineering, architecture, and development.